There's a patch of woods outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where for about a year something watched people from the tree line. Something with wings and eyes that glowed red in the dark. Back in the 60s, just north of town, there was an old abandoned World War II munitions plant. Locals called it the TNT area, miles of overgrown roads, close to 100 concrete domes half buried in the dirt where they used to store explosives, connected underneath by old service tunnels running bunker to bunker. By the 60s, the plant had been empty for 20 years, swallowed by woods and wetland. It was the kind of place teenagers went to park, hunters went to walk, and grown men avoided after dark. That plant had a real history before any of this. The government built it in 1942, a $45 million operation turning out 500,000 pounds of TNT a day, with 3,500 workers on the payroll at its peak. When the war ended in '45, Washington shut it down and handed the land back to West Virginia, on one condition: it had to stay wild, set aside for wildlife. That's how it became the McClintic Wildlife Management Area, 3,600 acres of forest and wetland, with those old concrete bunkers still sitting out there, half swallowed by brush. Decades later, the government actually added part of that same land to the federal Superfund cleanup list. Real leftover wartime chemical contamination they didn't fully catch until years afterward. It's real government land with a real paper trail. What people claim happened in those woods afterward is a different story. On the night of November 15, 1966, two young couples were driving through there in an old Chevy when their headlights caught something standing by the abandoned power plant. 6, maybe 7 feet tall, wings folded against its back. And where a face should have been, just 2 enormous eyes, glowing a deep solid red. They said it never made a sound. It just watched them. Then it followed their car, they claimed, at speeds over 100 miles an hour without ever flapping once. They drove straight to the county sheriff, shaking, and the story hit the local paper the very next morning. They weren't the last. A man named Newell Partridge, way out in Salem, almost 90 miles off, said his television screen went to snow that same night, screeching with a sound he'd never heard before. Then his dog Bandit took off barking into the dark after 2 red circles of light glowing out past the barn. Partridge called for him. Bandit never came back. The very next night, a woman named Marcella Bennett drove out to visit friends who lived near the old plant. She'd barely stepped out of her car when something grey and man-shaped rose up out of the grass a few feet away. She was holding her baby. She screamed, dropped to the ground, still gripping the child, and staggered back inside. She told people afterward the thing followed her right up to the porch. She was so shaken, she ended up seeing a doctor for weeks after. And it wasn't just a nighttime thing. 11 days later, in broad daylight, a woman named Connie Carpenter said she watched the same creature from her car in the middle of the afternoon, red eyes and all. A local newspaper reporter named Mary Hyre started fielding the calls. She worked the county beat for the Athens Messenger, and after just one active weekend, she said her phone rang over 500 times. She wrote the story up again and again, and the more she wrote, the stranger her own life got. She claimed strange, silent men in dark suits started showing up at her office, asking pointed questions about what she knew, then vanishing without ever giving a name. Whatever people believe about the creature itself, Hyre's reporting is the reason this story didn't just stay a rumor passed around one small town. It's the paper trail that's still there today. By December, a writer out of New York named John Keel showed up to dig into it himself. He wasn't a local. He was a working journalist who'd already spent years chasing paranormal reports around the world, and this one pulled him in enough that he kept coming back to Point Pleasant for the next 13 months. He interviewed witnesses one by one, kept detailed field notes, and worked side by side with Mary Hyre while he did it. People still argue about how much of what he wrote was straight reporting and how much grew into something else by the time it reached the page. But the interviews themselves and the fear in that town were real and well documented. Keel didn't think the creature was the whole story. Around the same time, people in the area were also reporting unmarked lights in the sky, phones and car engines cutting out for no reason, and strange men showing up at witnesses' doors asking questions before disappearing. The same kind of men Hyre described. Keel came to believe all of it was connected, that Point Pleasant had become what he called a window area, a place where this kind of activity clusters together. That's Keel's theory, not a proven fact, but it's the framework that turned a single creature sighting into a much bigger, stranger case file. Not everyone in town bought it. Mason County's sheriff at the time, George Johnson, investigated and leaned toward a natural explanation. An oversized, misidentified bird, maybe a sandhill crane blown far off its migration path, its wingspan and reflective eyes twisted into something monstrous in the dark. Even Keel admitted some later reports were probably just people spooked into seeing an owl. And the number you always hear, over 100 witnesses, actually gets disputed. Some published research puts the real, documented sighting count closer to 2 or 3 dozen over that year. The fear was real either way. How many separate creatures people actually saw is where the story gets fuzzy. Keel put everything he'd gathered into a book, The Mothman Prophecies, published in 1975, part reporting, part memoir, part his own theories about what connects it all. It's still in print 50 years later, and in 2002 it became a Hollywood film starring Richard Gere, which is how most people outside West Virginia ever heard this story at all. But before Hollywood ever touched it, the town had already lived through the part of this story nobody argues about. Because 13 months after that first sighting, something happened that had nothing to do with a creature in the woods. The Silverbridge had been standing since 1928, carrying traffic between Point Pleasant and Ohio across the river for almost 40 years, without a single major incident. Then on December 15, 1967, right at the start of evening rush hour, packed bumper to bumper with holiday traffic, at 4:58 in the afternoon, the whole main span came down into the water, taking more than 30 vehicles with it. Investigators say the actual collapse took well under a minute. Some estimates put the main span's fall at under 20 seconds once it started. 46 people died that night. 2 of them were never recovered. It remains one of the deadliest bridge collapses in American history. So what actually caused it? Investigators spent 3 years tracing it down to one single steel I-bar 330, inside the bridge's suspension chain, an older chain-link design most newer suspension bridges didn't even use anymore. A tiny crack, barely 1/10 of an inch deep, had been slowly growing inside that joint for nearly 40 years, invisible from the outside, the kind of flaw you could only find by taking the whole thing apart. The design made it worse too. Each link in that chain was just 2 I-bars side by side, with no backup bar to catch the load. When that one bar finally gave out, there was nothing to stop the failure from tearing straight across the whole span. It was a structural failure, plain and simple, decades in the making. That one crack changed how this country builds and inspects bridges. Congress passed the Federal Aid Highway Act the following year, creating the first national bridge inspection standards the US had ever had. Regular professional inspections instead of whoever happened to be available. A sister bridge built the same way, over in St. Mary's, got shut down and torn down soon after, just to be safe. Engineers started designing for redundancy, building critical parts where inspectors could actually see them. Every time a bridge gets inspected in America today, there's a straight line back to that one afternoon in Point Pleasant. After the bridge fell, the sightings just stopped. No more red eyes in the tree line. Whatever it was, people said it had come to warn them, and now it was gone. Whether you believe that part or not, Point Pleasant never let go of the story. Today there's a 12-foot stainless steel statue downtown, built by sculptor Bob Roach back in 2003, and a museum dedicated to the whole legend, which fittingly keeps a real stuffed snowy owl on display, one of the leading down-to-earth explanations, right next to the movie posters and the festival memorabilia. Every September, somewhere around 10,000 to 15,000 people show up for the Mothman Festival. It's one of the most talked about legends in the country, and it all traces back to one dark road, one bridge, and one year nobody in that town will ever forget. Follow Sourbud's Den for more real stories.